Please like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. The Lord bless you and keep you. Thank you.
Jones, your host. If you are a part of this ministry, I say unto you, God bless you. If you are visiting this ministry, I say unto you, God bless you. I also invite you to become a part of this ministry. In this ministry, we seek God, who gives us the power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he promised unto the fathers, as it is this day. We do not seek wealth, we seek God, who gives us the power to get wealth. Deuteronomy 8:18. Now, today, this year 2022, we're starting this year off with war. This Russian and Ukraine conflict has many people talking about the second coming of Christ. This Russian-Ukraine war has many of the saints talking about the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. Now, if you're going to be talking about the second coming, I want you to be well informed. I want you to know every detail about the second coming of the Lord. That is why I am bringing you this teaching today on the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, the second coming of Jesus Christ is one event that has two parts to it. In the first part, Jesus comes back for the church. He fulfills the promise that he made to us in St. John chapter 14, verses 2 and 3, where Jesus says, I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Now, simply put, Jesus said, I am going to come back and get you one day and take you to heaven. The first part of this two event, the second coming of the Lord, is Jesus fulfilling his promise taken from St. John 14. He comes back for the church. Now, the second part takes place 7 years after the first part takes place. The second part is Jesus coming back to earth to set up the kingdom. The second coming of Christ is one event that has two parts to it. In the first part, Jesus comes back for the church. He comes to the cloud. He does not come all the way to the earth. He just comes to the cloud, and we are caught up together to be with the Lord, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. But the second part takes place 7 years after our gathering together to the Lord. He is coming back to set up the kingdom. Now, in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus goes in great details with his disciples, talking about his second coming. Now, in Matthew 24, the disciples asked Jesus 3 questions. They first asked him, when will this temple be destroyed? Now, Jesus didn't answer that question here in Matthew, but he does answer the question in Luke chapter 21. In Luke chapter 21, Jesus tells them, when you see Jerusalem surrounded with armies, know that your desolation or the destruction of the temple is near. So Luke does answer Jesus' first question, but here in Matthew does not record Jesus' answer to the first question. Now, Matthew does answer Jesus' answer to their second 2 questions. The second question they asked him is, what will be the sign of your coming back to set up the kingdom? What will be the sign of you coming back to set up the kingdom? And the third question they asked Jesus is, what will be the sign of the end of the church age? Now, here in Matthew 24, Jesus goes in great detail to answer their last 2 questions. Now, here in Matthew, Jesus is going to answer their questions in the order that they were asked. They first asked about his coming to set up the kingdom, and then afterward they asked about the end of the church age. Now, in all actuality, the events will take place in reverse order. Jesus is going to come back for the church in the first part of the event, and then 7 years later, he's going to come back to set up the kingdom, will be the second part of the second coming of the Christ. But here in Matthew, Jesus answers that question in reverse order because that is the way they asked the question, in that order. So we're going to stick with the printed word here. We're going to study it in the order that Jesus answers that question. He's going to talk about him coming back to set up the kingdom first, and then he's going to talk about him coming back for the church second. So that's the way we're going to look at it here. Now here in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus began, we call this the Olivet Discourse. Jesus began by telling them that before he comes back to set up the kingdom, there are going to be great deceptions in the world. He said there are going to be false Christs, a lot of false Christs, false messiahs are going to be in the world. He said you're going to hear about wars and rumors of wars. You're going to hear about nations coming against nation and kingdom is against kingdom. He said they're going to be famine, pestilence, earthquake. Jesus said all these are the beginning of sorrow. Now all of these events are reoccurring things and events that reoccur over and over again during the church age. They are reoccurring events. All of these different things take place over and over again during the church age. But when we get to verse 8, Jesus says, all these are the beginning of sorrow. Now verse 9, Jesus said, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Now I really believe here in verse 9, the setting of verse 9 is the tribulation. I believe here in verse 9, the events that Jesus are about to describe take place during the tribulation. I'm going to prove it to you a little later. Verse 10, Jesus said, and then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Verse 11 says, and many false prophets shall arise and deceive many. Verse 12, Jesus said, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Tribulation, tribulation, tribulation. 13 says, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. The tribulation is a 7-year period. He that endureth to the end of the tribulation shall be saved. Verse 14, Jesus said, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Now, verse 14, Jesus talk about the gospel being gone to the 4 nations. Now, many people would think that he's referring to the internet, because we have the internet. The gospel can go to all nations easily. That is true. But here, the reference is to Revelation 7, where Jesus called 144,000 Jewish evangelists, and he sends them throughout the whole world. They are preaching the gospel of the kingdom. Verse 14 here in Matthew 24 is a reference to Revelation 7, where the 144,000 Jewish evangelists during the tribulation, they're going to go into all of the earth preaching the gospel of the kingdom. Now, verse 15, Jesus said, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whosoever read it, let him understand. Now, in verse 15 here, Jesus talks about the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet. Now, in Daniel chapter 9 and 27, Daniel prophesies about the coming Antichrist. Daniel said he's going to go into the temple during the middle of the tribulation 7-year period. After 3.5 years, the Antichrist is going to go into the newly rebuilt temple in Jerusalem, and he's going to demand that all of the animal sacrifices cease to be offered, and that he be worshipped as king. This will take place during the middle part of the tribulation. Jesus said in verse 15, when you see this come to pass, know that your desolation, whosoever. Jesus said, when you see this, spoken by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, Jesus said, when you see, he's talking to the nation of Israel that is going on during the tribulation. Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, Jesus said in verse 16, then you which be in Judea, Judea is in Israel, the temple is in Jerusalem, flee to the mountains. Verse 17, Jesus said, that him which is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. Jesus telling them, when you see the abomination of desolation, flee for your life. In verse 18, Jesus said, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. 19, Jesus said, but woe unto them that are with child and them that give suck in those days, because pregnant women cannot flee quickly. They're going to have to flee quickly. Verse 20, Jesus said, but pray that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day, because if it does, you're not going to be able to flee quickly. Verse 21, Jesus said, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor shall ever be. Jesus said, when the abomination of desolation takes place, spoken by Daniel the prophet, during the middle part of the tribulation, Jesus said this is going to be the time of great tribulation, the worst time since man has been on the earth. Jesus said there has never been a time since man has been on the earth as worse as that time is going to be. And Jesus says in verse 19, for then shall be great tribulation, such as not was since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. 22, Jesus said, and except those days should be shortened, no flesh should be saved, but for the elect's sake these days shall be shortened. Now the elect here in verse 22 is the nation of Israel. Now the nation of Israel is God's elect, and the church is Jesus' elect. Here in verse 22, the nation of Israel are the ones that's going through the tribulation. The church have already been taken to heaven during the tribulation. Verse 23, Jesus said, then if any man say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. 24, for there shall arise false Christ and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch if it was possible that they should deceive the very elect. Now verse 24 is a reference to Revelation 13, where it talks about the false prophet and the Antichrist. The false prophet is going to have power to do a lot of miracles, deceptive miracles during the tribulation. Now 25, Jesus said, behold, I have told you before. You said, wherefore if they say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chamber, believe it not. Jesus said in verse 27, for as the lightning come out of the east and shineth even to the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Jesus is now finna to give them the details of his coming to set up the kingdom. Jesus said in verse 28, for wheresoever the carcass is, that will the eagles be gathered together. Verse 29, Jesus said, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Verse 29, Jesus said, the second part of the second coming of the Lord, Jesus said, is going to take place immediately after the tribulation. Verse 30, Jesus said, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn when they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Verse 30 records Jesus coming to set up the kingdom. Jesus said, every eye is going to see him. Verse 31, Jesus said, and he, Jesus, shall send his angel with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven unto the other. Now in verse 31, this elect is the church. I just told you, Israel is God's elect, and the church is Jesus' elect. Let me read this again. Jesus said, and he, the Son of Man, Jesus Christ, shall gather his angels. When Jesus come back to set up the kingdom, the church will already be in heaven. The church will have been in heaven for 7 years. The church will already have gone through the marriage supper of the Lamb. That would have already taken place. After 7 years, Jesus is coming back to set up the kingdom, and he's going to bring the church back with him. Revelation 19 records this. Jesus said, and he shall send his angel with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather his elect, Jesus' elect, from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Verse 32, Jesus said, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branches they get tender and put it forth leaves, you know that summer is near. Jesus said in 33, likewise, when you see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verse 34, Jesus said, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all be fulfilled. Verse 34, Jesus said, this generation shall not pass away until all be fulfilled. Now, what generation is Jesus referring to? He's referring to the generation that is alive, that sees the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet. In verse 15, Jesus said the generation that is alive at the time of the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, that generation shall still be alive when Jesus comes back to set up the kingdom. Verse 34, Jesus said, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. Now, verse 35 ends Jesus' answer to their second question. What will be the sign of you coming back to set up the kingdom? Now, Jesus has answered their first question, their second question. Now he is going to answer their third question. What will be the sign of the end of the age? Now, let me just remind you again, the gathering, when the church is caught away up to heaven, Jesus is going to come back to get the church as he has promised in St. John 14, 2 and 3. Some people call it the rapture. When Jesus comes back for the church, that is going to end the church age. The church age cannot continue on the earth where there is no church. The rapture or the great catching away of the saints will end the church age, because the church age cannot continue on an earth where there is no church. So Jesus says he's about to now give the disciples the details of him fulfilling his promise, taken from St. John 14, 2 and 3. Verse 36, Jesus said, but of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no not the angel of heaven, but my Father only. Now, we don't know the day or the hour of the rapture. Jesus has told us many places that we don't know the day nor the hour of the rapture. Jesus has it like this intentionally, because if we knew what day and what hour he was coming back for the church, every one of us would wait until that day to start doing what we're supposed to do. So Jesus has kept that, and the Father has kept that day hidden from us, so we'll be ready at all times, not get ready at a certain time. Now he said here in verse 36, of that day, that hour knoweth no man. Of that day and that hour knoweth no man. He said in verse 7, but as in the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days of Noah, they were married and given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark. In other words, life was just normal. Marriage and given in marriage are normal things. Jesus saying everything is going to appear normal when he comes back for the church. Now, verse 39, Jesus said, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away, so shall also the coming of the man, Son of Man be. Now, in verse 39, Jesus is telling us that when he comes back for the church, the thing's going to appear normal on earth, but it's going to be like it was in the days of Noah. When the flood came, it was sudden and without warning. All of a sudden, it began to rain. When Jesus comes back for the church, he's telling us in verse 39, it's going to be sudden and without warning. We're going to have to be ready and stay ready. Verse 40, Jesus said, then shall be two in the field, one shall be taken and the other left. There are going to be some people left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, one shall be taken and the other left. 42, Jesus said, watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. Jesus said in verse 43, but know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have allowed his house to be broken in. Verse 44, Jesus said, therefore be ye ready also, for in such an hour as you think not the Son of Man coming. In verse 44, Jesus is telling us to be ready at all times. We don't know when he's coming, so we can't wait and try to get ready at a certain time. We have to be ready at all times. We need to listen to what Jesus said in verse 44. Jesus said, therefore be ye ready also, for in such a time that you think not the Son of Man is coming. Be ye ready also. We have to be ready every day because we don't know when he's coming back for us. Now, a lot of people, many people, all of us, most of us, wants to know what is the criteria for being taken up in the rapture or being caught up to be with the Lord. Jesus has already told us right here, two people going to be working in the field, one going to be taken, one going to be left. Two women going to be grinding at the mill, one going to be taken and one going to be left. What is the criteria for being caught up to be with the Lord? Well, he tells us right here in verse 44, when he said, be ye also ready. Readiness is the criteria for being taken up in the rapture or being caught up to be with the Lord. Those that are ready, those are the ones that are going to be caught up. Now, Jesus uses the remainder of this chapter to encourage us to be ready at all times. And then he takes it further and goes on over into the first part of Matthew 25, and he gives a parable of 10 virgins. Jesus said 5 were wise and 5 were foolish. The Bible said the wise stayed ready and the foolish got unready. And the Bible said one day there was a cry made, behold, the bridegroom is coming. Go you out to meet him. And the Bible said they that were ready went into the marriage and the door was shut. They that were ready went into the marriage and the door was shut. That is the criteria for being caught up with the Lord, readiness. Those that were ready went into the marriage and the door was shut. From this verse here, from verse 44 on to the end of the chapter, on over into chapter 25, Jesus encourages us to get ready and stay ready. Be ready. Readiness is the criteria for being caught up to be with the Lord. Now, Saint, I have given you Matthew 24, which gives us in detail the second coming of the Lord. The second coming of the Lord is one event divided into two parts. The first part, Jesus comes back for the church. Then after a 7-year period, he comes back with the church to set up the kingdom. That is the second coming of the Lord. Now, whether or not this Russian-Ukraine conflict will usher in Jesus coming back to get us, we don't know. Jesus has already told us, no man knows the day nor the hour when he's coming back to get us, but we ought to be ready at all times. My friend, I pray that you are ready, and I pray that you will stay ready. Right here, I'm going to ask you to become a part of this ministry. Go to our website and sow a seed to help me continue to minister the gospel to America. I'm preaching in the Philippines. I'm preaching in Pakistan. I ask you to help me. Go to the website, www.drbernardajonesministry.org, and sow a financial seed to help me. We are ministering, we are clothing the naked and feeding the hungry here in America. We are clothing the naked and feeding the hungry in the Philippines. We are clothing the naked and feeding the hungry in Pakistan. Go to our website and sow a financial seed and help me feed the hungry and clothe the naked, and God will bless you. My friend, the blessing of the Lord be upon you. I bless you in the name of the Lord. See you next time.